Good morning, everyone. Mr. Carlo here, back in action for another Tuesday of virtual home instruction. The music that I'm playing does have to do with the topic today that I want to talk to you about. Before we do anything else, I'd like to invite you to join me in opening today's lesson with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So before I talk about today's topic, going back to medieval times, I wonder if you noticed anything about the American flag that I used today in my slideshow here. It's a little different. Can you catch the difference? This is the 48-star flag, which was used up until the time of World War II, which was close in time to when Alaska and Hawaii were added as our 49th and 50th states. That had happened just a little bit earlier. But the 48-star flag, as you can see, has 48 stars, okay, lined up in perfect rows and columns. Our current 50-star flag has the rows of stars slightly staggered, okay, but this one, as you can see, is more of a perfect square of stars, that is. Anyway, so just an interesting note. From time to time, you might see this flag displayed different places. Sometimes you hardly notice that there's a difference, but if you look closely, it's one of the evolutions of our national symbol here. Okay, so today's topic. Here's a question for you. What do you know about the stories of Robin Hood? Robin Hood. Have you ever seen a version, an adaptation of Robin Hood's story as a cartoon, as a movie, maybe read something that had to do with these stories? Okay. Can you identify any characters, settings, the plot, any famous things associated with this story? Maybe you've never heard of this. Certainly if you've been sitting in my class all year, you've heard me reference Robin Hood before because it fits our definition of a legend. You remember what I say when I say that this is a legend? Okay, not a myth, but a legend. It mixes fact with fiction. In this case, the stories of Robin Hood, okay, they mix a factual setting. Medieval England really was a place, England in the Middle Ages. They have some factual events. For instance, the Crusades. Robin Hood fights in a famous series of wars from the Middle Ages called the Crusades. These wars happened in the Middle East. When the story picks up, he's returned from fighting in the Crusades, returned to England. Some of the characters in the story are true. There might have been somebody who lived around this time, or there certainly were people who the character of Robin Hood was based on, although somebody known as Robin Hood himself might never have existed. But the place that he lived did. Nottingham, which is the town. There really is Nottingham in Nottinghamshire and in England. It's a little north of London, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the characters, okay, the king and the prince in the story were real people, but I'm not going to say that quite yet, okay? So a legend is a story that takes some factual stuff and mixes with fictional elements to teach us about the past. And the thing is, one of the best ways that you can learn about this time period and other time periods from the past, but certainly medieval times, is by getting into watching, enjoying stories that take place in this time. Now this story, Robin Hood, it got made into many films and series, comic books throughout the 20th century, and now even into the 21st century there have been new adaptations. But it's actually been, people have been entertained by some of these stories going back to the early Renaissance and the late Middle Ages. Okay, these are stories that have really been around and stood the test of time. Of course, they change over time. Okay, but these stories are full of not just interesting story elements, but you can learn about the time period because of the way people behave, because of the setting, because of the way they speak, because of the things that happen and the things they participate in, the weapons they use even. Of course, if you know these stories at all, you probably know Robin Hood is famous for being sort of like a knight. But he's a skilled archer. That's his special sort of talent. He's almost got like a bit of a superpower with his archery skills. Okay, he's a good swordsman. Right, he's an English gentleman. And so what he's known for is he becomes an outlaw. He becomes an outlaw and he goes out and lives in Sherwood Forest, where he leads his band of merry men. And this is a group of people kind of working. So the way the story is set up, these people are kind of resisting the local governing force. Now, the local governing force are invaders. If you remember from yesterday's video and discussion, you learned about a group that invaded England in the Middle Ages. Well, they were called the Normans. They are the bad guys in the Robin Hood story. Robin Hood is part of a group that was in England prior to the Norman invasion. They're called the Saxons or the Anglo-Saxons. Okay, so Robin Hood is the leader of this group, and they are sort of acting in defiance against the local government, which is the Normans. The Normans have come over to England, they've built castles as a show of their power, and they've kind of taken over. Robin Hood lives about 100 years or so after the time of William the Conqueror, if you remember that name from yesterday. Some other famous characters. Maid Marian is sort of Robin Hood's love interest in the story. Okay, she's always portrayed as a strong, kind of lovely lady who lives amongst the Normans at their castle. Okay, she's played by in the Disney version, both characters are portrayed as animals, kind of foxes of the wood there. And in the old version that I enjoy, she's played by a famous actress called Olivia de Havilland. All right. The bad guys in the story include characters like the Sheriff of Nottingham, Sir Guy of Gisborne, and Prince John. Now, Prince John is actually based on a real character from history who became King John of England. Now, there's only been one King John in England's history, and part of the reason no other king was or no other ruler ever had that name was because this one was so bad at the job. He was the younger brother of a king who's remembered positively, right, whose name was Richard. But John, right, in the story he's called Prince John. In real life he was King John. He was so bad at his job, he was known for being greedy and power hungry, that the other powerful people in England at his time, rebelled and forced him to sign a famous document limiting the power of kings. In the story, he is kind of the antagonist, the bad guy of the story, along with some of his henchmen and supporters. And they're overtaxing the people and being unfair to the people of England, the Saxons. Now, the true king of England was John's older brother, Richard, who's portrayed as a good king in the story. But the problem is Richard is away fighting in the Crusades, so John has sort of taken over the role of king, and he's being tyrannical. He's doing things that are against the good will of the people. So here's Robin Hood kind of shaking hands with Richard, who's been off fighting in the Crusades. Richard is remembered as Richard the Lion-Hearted. Kind of like Thompson, he has the mascot of the lion, trying to show people what he's like, and it kind of becomes a symbol for kings in England. The lions. All right. Some famous scenes, Other famous characters. One of one of Robin's closest companions and friends is Little John, who fights with a bow staff, and famously when they first meet they have a little fight of their own, but it's just kind of a friendly competition. There's other fun characters like Will Scarlet, Friar Tuck, and another famous scene, Robin Hood competes in an archery tournament. Okay, but the cool the point that I'm trying to make is by learning about the legends and sort of the famous fictional stories that take place in the Middle Ages, you get to learn about the Middle Ages in a special way that makes it a little more human than when you just read articles and watch videos about true events of history. Okay. So this is really just an opportunity for enrichment. I'm not going to give you a grade or require you to do any of this, but I'll tell you this. Since I was a kid, I've gotten a kick out of some of these stories, some of these movies and films. Now, there's been a lot of famous versions of Robin Hood. I would not encourage you to watch some of them because some of them would be inappropriate for me to recommend to you, okay? Whether they're rated PG-13 or rated R or if they're some sort of modern TV series. I can't really recommend that you go just watching anything that you find that's an adaptation of this story. That could be inappropriate. Now, of course, whatever mom, dad says is okay for you, that takes precedent, if you will. That's up to you and your family. But these are 3 versions of this story that I do feel comfortable recommending to you. Okay, the first one obviously is the Walt Disney cartoon version. Now this came out in the 1970s. It's a little dated, but it's fun. Okay, obviously you guys are getting a little old for some of the old Disney cartoons, but this is a classic. It's fun. It's got some good 1960s, 70s style music here sung by this character back here. It's got some fun jokes and action. You probably get a kick out of it if you watched it. Okay, little older, but it's an oldie but a goodie. Okay, in the middle here is a version that Disney also made in the 1950s. Okay, it's an older movie. It's in color and everything. Now, here's the thing about this one. I have never watched it. I'm going to do so tonight probably, but I'm comfortable recommending it because it is Disney. Now, it's a little outdated, of course. Okay, all these films probably have some moments, some jokes that are a little dated, maybe things that you might not see in a modern production. Okay, but you know what? They're either rated G or PG, and at this point, with us being on virtual home instruction, it's Disney. I'm comfortable recommending that. The third one over here is the oldest of the 3. Okay, this is called The Adventures of Robin Hood, and do you know what? It's a straight-up classic. It is my favorite version of these stories. It is the total classic film version here. This is a famous actor who played many sword-fighting, swashbuckling characters in his career. His name was Errol Flynn, okay, and Olivia de Havilland, and it's a great production. I'm going to post one scene from this version on the classroom today. It's the scene from the archery tournament, just to give you a little taste of what this film is like. But that is actually where I got the music also that I played at the opening of this video. Okay, the music from this movie was very famous. It was composed and conducted by somebody called Eric Wolfgang Korngold. He was a famous award-winning composer of music, and he actually had a big influence on modern movie composers like John Williams, who wrote the scores for Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Harry Potter and so many other movies. Okay, but the guy who wrote the music for this film, okay, was known for being very, very good at creating music for adventure stories, and you can really hear it. It's a classic film score. Okay, this movie was an award-winning movie, major production. It actually came out in 1938, which was the year before other famous movies like Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz, you might have heard of, came out right around the same time. This was like the golden age of Hollywood. All right, it is in color. Okay, now these 2 are definitely on Disney Plus. Okay, this one I couldn't find on a streaming service. unless you like rent it for a couple bucks if you want. I'm telling you, this is not required. I'm just saying, if you want to see a classic adventure story that is, it's got adventure, it's got some comedy, it's got some romance, it's got fun, classic scenes, and can be a decent learning experience, okay? You can't go wrong with some of these stories, okay? You can even find some of them on YouTube, but you might have to pay a couple bucks. I don't know. That's up to mom, dad. That's up to mom, dad. I can't require you to pay money or require you to watch something quite like this. But it's an enrichment opportunity. That's what I'm saying. If you're looking for something fun that's connected to class, little enrichment opportunity, cool thing to check out and to learn about, especially since it goes right along with our topic. We're learning about the people, the groups who ruled and interacted and fought in medieval England, the Normans and the Anglo-Saxons, two different groups. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to talk about for today. Now, stepping away from that, the only thing that you have to do today to get credit for attendance, you have two options. You only need to do one, not both. You can either fill in today's Google form, that's typing, or you can go over to Flipgrid and respond to the Flipgrid activity that I posted. It might look like a lot, but it's really not. All you have to do is participate, give me some thoughts. Here's what I'm asking you to do. No content questions today, nothing about history. All I want to know is, what do you think of virtual home instruction and what could we do to improve it? Okay, I want to know, what do you think are the best activities we've been doing? What can we do? Have you found any frustrations? Are there any activities we should add to social studies? And is there anything you might like me to communicate to your other teachers and guidance counselors if I have the opportunity to do so? Again, you can either respond as a video or you can do it in type as a Google form. Either way, you do not have to do both. Guys, thanks so much. And I'm looking forward to moving through the rest of the year. We're going to be on virtual home instruction now through the end of the year. And we just do our best to have a meaningful learning experience. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.